Hey guys, it's Paul here, and today's episode of Goose Pimples is brought to you by Parabox Monthly. Parabox has been great to us so far. They loved what we do, and we love what they do, so we decided to team up in order to bring you guys the best of both worlds. And let me explain what Parabox is. Starting at $19.95, you can receive your Parabox every month. Every box comes with at least one soft style, high quality t-shirt. But that's not it. Just by receiving your Parabox, you're entered into what can only be described as like an online-offline mystery adventure. Do you like solving mysteries? Do you think you're a modern-day Sherlock Holmes? Well, why don't you put yourself to the test? If you're right, and you can solve the mystery, you'll be entered to win awesome additional merchandise from Parabox for free. $19.95 is a great deal for just a rad shirt alone these days. And these shirts are some of the coolest I've seen. They're all horror and paranormal themed, and they're awesome. I mean, these are shirts you'll want to wear. They're not corny or over the top. If you want to support Goose Pimples, and you want to support this awesome company as well, head over to parabox.com, that's Para-box.com, to get started and get your first box next month. You won't be disappointed, I promise. Make sure to use promo code GoosePimples at checkout, and remember that there are no contracts and you can cancel at any time. That's Parabox, Para-box.com. Welcome, my friends. Murder, mystery, Mondays. This can only mean one thing. This is Goose Pimples, a show where I, Paul Breeden, am joined by my cousin,
Eric Arterbridge,
to delve into the creepy and skin-crawling stories that keep us all up at night. Eric, how was your week?
Oh my God, Paul, it was pretty good. How was your week?
It was very good. It was very good.
Well, Paul, listen, I have to tell you about a really spooky dream I had the other night.
Oh boy, okay.
Yeah, it was really creepy. You talk about goose pimples, I had goose pimples. All right,
So what happened?
In my dream, so I was at home in my bed sleeping. In my dream, I was at home in my bed sleeping. And in my dream, I woke up that because my dog was freaked out by something. Thurston, yeah, that's him. He's a little guy. He sleeps in my bed with me. So in my dream, I woke up because he was freaked out and was like crawling onto my pillow behind my head to like cower away from something. And I was like, what are you doing? Then all of a sudden I felt someone or something sit on the bottom of my bed where my feet where my feet are.
Wait, in the dream or in real life, or is it all kind of blurring together at this point?
It all kind of blurred together. So I guess it was in my dream. I felt somebody sit at the foot of my bed. And like as a gut reaction, I like kicked my feet.
Of course, that's the classic Eric maneuver.
Yeah, so I just kicked my feet to shoo it away, and it got up. But like, I woke up immediately, and when I woke up, I wasn't sure how much of it was dream and how much was real life. But then I looked over and saw that Thurston was looking at me like I was crazy. He was just sitting there sound asleep
after you had kicked him halfway across the room.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. It freaked me out. I had goose pimples up and down my whole body.
Are you sure this wasn't like a case of sleep paralysis? Well, I guess not, because you kicked your feet, right?
I did in my dream or in real life. I don't know what was what. But I don't know. I think we're maybe opening a door to another another universe by doing this podcast.
We're inviting things like this?
Yeah, I think, well, maybe we're pissing things off, too. Who knows?
Are you sure it wasn't one of your roommates?
It definitely wasn't a person in my room.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is creepy, and it's you know, your emotions are sensitive when you're sleeping. Like this, the slightest thing can just freak you the hell out.
Oh yeah. I thought it was really weird that I dreamed that I was asleep in my bed where I currently was. I mean, that's pretty weird too.
That is weird. Now, were you like looking down on the situation?
No, I was in my body.
It happens, man. That's a weird one.
Yeah, well, I think there's something going on.
Was your heart racing?
Oh, God, yes.
Well, Eric, let's get your heart racing again. Let me tell you a story about a little boy named Sam Taylor.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard of Sam Taylor before, Eric?
No. Nobody has.
Sam Taylor was a fascinating little boy.
Oh.
One day when Sam was 18 months old, his father was changing his diaper. And out of the blue...
Whoa, where'd that come from? Not me.
Out of the blue, Sam said, "Can I tell you something?" to his father. His father said, "Yes, go ahead." And Sam replied, "When I was your age, I used to change your diapers."
What?
Sam Taylor had been born 18 months after his paternal grandfather died.
Oh, no.
And at the age of 1, he began recalling details of a past life. Of the past life of his own grandfather.
Oh, no.
Do you know where we're heading with this episode, Eric?
I have an idea.
We're going to talk about...
Raising babies.
A strange, annoying little kids that always want to make up lies. It gives you goose pimples.
Yeah.
No, we're going to talk about the strange phenomenon of children that can remember past lives.
Yes. Yes.
So, starting at the age of 1, Sam Taylor was able to recall details about his grandfather's life that were so clear and so vivid that his parents were certain he could not have learned these things through normal means.
Like what?
At one point, he told his parents that his grandfather's sister had been murdered. This was something
That's a horrible thing to say to somebody.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it was true.
Oh my God.
Sam also knew that his grandmother used to use a certain food processor to make milkshakes for his grandfather every day until the end of his life.
Lucky guy.
Yeah, right? When Sam was 4.5 years old, his grandmother died, and his father went out to take care of the estate, and when he returned home, he had a group of family pictures. Sam's mother had them spread out one evening when Sam began pointing at the pictures of his grandfather saying, "That's me!" To test him, his mother showed him a class picture that included 16 boys. Sam was able to easily pick out his grandfather in the group.
Wow.
So Sam Taylor is just one of the case studies of University of Virginia's Jim Tucker. Jim Tucker is considered to be kind of an expert on this subject, this phenomenon. He's the world's leading researcher on the topic of past life recollection.
Oh, wow.
In 2008, Tucker published a review of cases that were suggestive of reincarnation in the journal Explore. In his review, he reported the following. In 1960, there's a guy named Ian Stevenson, and he was kind of like the forerunner of this whole thing. He's the first person that really dug in. So 1960, this is a quote from the report. 1960, Ian Stevenson, the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry. The quotes get me. In 1960, Ian Stevenson...
Any relation to Ian King?
I don't know. Probably not. His last name is Stevenson.
Oh, any relation to the Stevensons in our family?
Yeah.
Okay,
maybe. Okay, let's try this again. In 1960, Ian Stevenson, the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Virginia, wrote a review of 44 previously published cases of individuals who had reported memories of previous lives.
Oh my God.
He then began to hear of new cases, and the following year took a trip to India after learning of 5 cases there. He was there for 4 weeks and found 25 cases. He archived similar results in Sri Lanka and realized that the phenomenon was much more common than anyone had known. So, Stevenson, this guy from 1960, the guy who kind of spiked this thing. Stevenson was said to have taken a very analytical approach to his research, and approached the study as a methodical and careful investigator. He even wrote a book on the subject called The 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Despite his efforts, the work never gained any mainstream acceptance, and the theory of reincarnation still remains on the outskirts of true scientific study.
Huh.
There is, the late Carl Sagan, you know who Carl Sagan is?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Carl Sagan apparently was notoriously skeptical of any non-mainstream work in as far as scientific study goes. But he was quoted as saying, "There are 3 claims in the field which, in my opinion, deserve serious study," with the third being that young children sometimes report details of previous lives, which upon checking turn out to be accurate, and which they could not have known about in any other way.
Oh, wow.
So Carl Sagan was kind of into that. He said it needed to be looked into more.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Carl.
I do too. Let's talk about the typical features of past life recollection for a second, Eric.
Okay.
Okay, so this is described by Tucker in his review. And he says, the subjects in these cases tend to be young children. They typically begin describing previous life when they are 2 or 3 years old, and they usually stop by the age of 6 or 7. So it's very rare for kids to remember this stuff past the age of 6 and 7.
Okay.
There are some cases where it happens. We'll get into some of them, but for the most part, it just kind of fades away. The memories of their current life kind of overtake the previous life's memories.
Oh, wow.
They make statements spontaneously without the use of hypnotic regression. So a lot of these kids, they're not coaxed into saying this, or the subject's not brought up. They just, out of nowhere, will make these spontaneous statements about their previous life.
Yeah.
They describe their recent lives with the median interval between the death of the previous individual and the birth of the young child being only 16 months. So typically when they can check this out and they can trace the sources and basically substantiate these statements that the kids are saying, it usually turns out that the life of the person they believe they were ended around 16 months before they were born.
Oh, okay.
So it's usually a pretty quick turnover in the spirit world.
That makes sense. If it's such a quick turnover, they still remember parts of it.
Yeah. It says they also describe ordinary lives, usually in the same country. The one part of the life that is often out of the ordinary is the mode of death. 70% of the children that recall previous lives, the previous life ended by unnatural means.
Oh, really?
Some subjects report having been deceased family members, whereas others say that they were strangers in another location. If they give enough details, such as the name of the location, then people have often gone there and identified a deceased individual, the previous personality whose life appears to match the statement that the child made. So it's not uncommon for people to like some of these kids can remember so detailed that they can go and check it out. Like they can remember where they lived, who lived there,
yeah,
how they died, what they did in their previous life.
That's intense.
Yeah, it is intense. So the next case we're going to get into is the case of Ryan from the Midwest. Now, Ryan had a lot of media coverage, but I guess they worked pretty hard to cover up his last name because I looked all over and all the stories just referred to him as Ryan. He actually even appeared on television news programs, but even on there was only referred to as Ryan. So we're just going to refer to him as Ryan.
Ryan from the Midwest.
Ryan from the Midwest.
That's right.
So Ryan's story began when he was 4 years old, when he was experiencing frequent, horrible nightmares.
Oh, no.
Once he turned 5, he made an announcement to his mother. He told her, "I used to be somebody else."
Uh-oh.
He would often talk about going home to Hollywood.
Oh, God, that's what I want to do.
And would beg his mother to take him there. He told her detailed stories about meeting stars like Rita Hayworth, dancing in Broadway productions, and working for an agency where people would frequently change their names. He even remembered that the name of the street he used to live on had the word rock in it.
Oh, wow.
Ryan's mother was a little freaked out by this.
I can imagine, yeah.
So Cindy, Ryan's mother Cindy, said that his stories were
Cindy.
so detailed and so extensive that it just wasn't like a child could have made it up.
Well, yeah.
Given Ryan's insistence on the reality of his past life, his mom, Cindy, took him to a public library to get some books about Hollywood. Mm-hmm. Eventually, at the library, they came across a picture in a book from 1932. The book was about a movie called Night After Night. Ryan got very excited when he saw this picture and exclaimed, "That's George! We did a picture together." Eric, I sent you the picture. If you check the Skype chat, I sent you the picture that he actually saw in the book.
Okay, let me see if I can find it. Okay, yeah, I see the picture.
You see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the picture he saw. And like I said, he says, "That's George. We did a picture together." And then he says, "And Mama, that guy's me. I found me." So the book didn't list the 6 people that are pictured. This picture, by the way, will be on the website if you want to check it out. GoosePimplesPodcast.com. The book didn't list the 6 people in the picture, but Cindy was later able to verify that the one Ryan had pointed to was indeed George Raft. George Raft was a film star in the 1930s and 40s, and Ryan described a scene in the movie that they had done together that involved a closet full of guns. So that night, Cindy and Ryan went on YouTube, and they were able to find the movie Night After Night. And there was indeed a scene with a closet full of guns.
Oh, wow.
Ryan was only 5 at the time all this took place, and he had never seen a black and white movie, and definitely had never seen Night After Night. So, Eric, you know what they did?
What? Did they go to Hollywood?
Not yet.
You're going to Hollywood!
They reached out to Professor Tucker.
Oh, that's your dog, Professor Tucker.
It was.
He
reached out to
away.
Professor Tucker, the one who we talked about wrote the review. And he took the case on and started researching. And after approximately 2 weeks, he contacted a Hollywood film archivist and was able to confirm that the man in the photo... Eric, I lost my place.
Hello? Anybody home?
So after approximately 2 weeks, Tucker was able to contact a Hollywood film archivist. And he was able to identify the man in the photo.
Oh.
The picture was indeed from the titled film Night After Night, and the man was Marty Martyn. Oh. Marty Martyn had been a movie extra, and then later became a powerful Hollywood agent before passing away in 1964.
Oh my God.
Martyn had indeed danced on Broadway, and he also worked at an agency where stage names were often created for new clients.
Oh, that's just like he said.
It is like he said. You want to hear something even creepier?
I do.
Marty Martyn lived at 825 North Roxbury Drive in Beverly Hills.
Oh,
do you remember what?
God.
Remember what Ryan said his address was? He said it had a rock in it.
That's right.
Okay. So these details that Ryan was able to communicate to Tucker before they learned the identity of the man he had described were crazy.
Yeah, that's
like I
insane.
Said, Ryan knew the address had rocks in it.
Yeah.
Ryan was also able to recall how many children Martyn had and how many times he had been married.
Oh, you didn't tell us that.
Before they even knew who Marty Martyn was. I mean, he said this stuff before they found the picture, before he claimed to be that person. Ryan also said he remembers an African-American maid. Marty and his wife employed several. These are just a few of 55 incredible facts that Ryan was able to remember from his previous life as Marty Martyn.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. Ryan, or Marty.
Either one.
He also kept having dreams that he'd wake up from talking about Senator Five. His parents seemed to think that Senator Five was some sort of villain. He always talked about him and an agency in New York. At this stage, Dr. Tucker and Ryan's mom weren't sure where the memories ended and simple childhood fantasies began. Mm-hmm. And it sounded like he was having dreams about being a secret agent and Senator Five.
Oh, yeah.
But Dr. Tucker eventually thinks he solved the Senator Five mystery. He showed Ryan 4 pictures, and Ryan pointed to one with certainty and said, "That's Senator Five."
Ooh.
It was actually a picture of Senator Ives, a U.S. senator who he was senator for 12 years in New York in the 1940s and 50s. The crazy thing is, Marty Martyn knew Senator Five. There are photographs of Marty Martyn and Senator Ives together in New York. Marty had offices for his talent agency in New York and L.A. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just, I mean, it's a lot of crazy coincidences, right?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
I mean, I don't think they are coincidences.
No, I don't think so. I think he's remembering his past life.
Yeah. Like we talked about, as Ryan aged, his memories became increasingly more dim. I don't have this written down, but I did, as I was researching this, he did actually get to meet Martyn's daughter. He went out to Hollywood and met her, and his mother said that after they met, he kind of held it together during the meeting, but after they met in private, she said that Ryan got very upset and kept asking why his daughter hadn't waited for him. He kept saying, that's her, but she's old now. She got old. Why didn't she wait for me?
Oh, no.
Yeah, so.
How do you explain that one to a kid?
I don't know. That's sad. So let's talk about birthmarks.
Okay.
Birthmarks are big when you're talking about the subject of reincarnation and remembering past lives. According to Tucker's report, quote, let's try this again, quote, in addition to the purported memories, a number of the children have had birthmarks or birth defects that appeared to match wounds, usually fatal ones, suffered by the previous personalities. Ian Stevenson published a 2,200-page work that documented over 200 such cases. 14 examples included a girl born with markedly malformed fingers who seemed to remember being a man whose fingers were cut off, and a boy who was born with stubs for fingers on his right hand who seemed to remember the life of a boy in another village who lost the fingers on his right hand in a fodder chopping machine.
Ew.
Yeah.
Damn.
But the birthmark thing is interesting. Usually, from what I've read, they believe that the birthmark will indicate the cause of death in the previous personality. One example of that is a boy from Thailand named, and I'm gonna destroy this name.
Nice.
Chai Chumalai Wong.
Okay.
We're gonna call him Chai, and that's probably pronounced incorrectly too. But Chai was a boy from Thailand who, when he was 3 years old, began to say that he had been a teacher named Bu Kai, who had been shot and killed as he rode his bike to school.
Oh, that's horrible.
It's very sad. I mean, these are kids, like 3 years old. Like, I know when my daughter was 3 years old.
You have a daughter?
Surprise! When my daughter was 3 years old, I don't think she really had this kind of concept of death to the point of, like, people being killed or murdered.
Yeah.
But he swears that he was a teacher who had been killed riding his bike to school, and he pleaded and begged to be taken to Bukai's parents, who he felt were his own parents. He knew the village where they lived, and eventually convinced his grandmother to take him there.
Wow.
According to the research, his grandmother reported that after they got off the bus, Chanai led her to a house where an older couple lived. Chanai appeared to recognize the couple, who were the parents of Bui Kai.
Oh, wow.
Bui Kai, the teacher who had been shot and killed on the way to school 5 years before Chai was born.
Oh, yeah.
The fascinating thing about Kai and Chai is they had something else in common.
What?
Kai, who was shot from behind, had a small round wound on the back of his head, typically of an entry wound, and a larger exit wound on his forehead. Chai was born with two birthmarks, a small round birthmark on the back of his head, and a larger, irregularly shaped one toward the front.
That is freaky.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is another one of those cases I'm talking about. So this wasn't just like a couple weird facts. Like, this kid knew a name, a village, his parents, how he had died, and then has the birthmark to kind of tie it all together.
Yeah, that is weird. And I think it's evidence as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's more than a coincidence. Like, it's not even fair to call that a coincidence.
Right. Can't be. Unless they're just making everything up. How do you know?
Well, I mean, I guess there's that. It could be.
I guess.
I mean, I don't think the kid would make it up. It could be that the parents are influencing this. I don't know. But this was in Thailand. I know that in India, they do believe in reincarnation, and, like, they hope for it. Like, where, Catholics believe when you die, you're going to go to heaven, and be up there with your family and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Some Indian religions believe that you will come back as another person.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'll tell you that when I was a kid, I never had any past life memories, but when I was a kid, I remember I was sitting on the toilet making a little poo-poo, and I got to thinking, and I was probably like 4 or 5, and I was thinking to myself, there are a lot of people in the world, and there have been a lot of people living for thousands of years, and I was like, if we went to Catholic school, so we learned all about heaven, and I was like, how can all these people fit in heaven? I bet they must just be born as different people again and again.
That's pretty deep thought for a little kid pooping on the toilet.
That's right. I think that it was like maybe some kind of leftover knowledge of how things actually work.
It could be. And the idea of this, I mean, before I even started researching this stuff and got into it, I always, the idea of coming back as something else, it seems, I don't know, it seems like a possibility. If you're going to consider the other things that people believe in other religions, this seems like just as much a viable possibility.
True. Well, you know Sylvia Browne, right?
Yeah.
Psychic to the Stars, Montel Williams.
Yeah.
Well, she talked about this all the time. Reincarnation, and how it all works.
She's the real deal.
That's right. She's dead now, though. I wonder if she came back yet.
Did she die?
Yeah, she died a couple of years ago.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I was heartbroken.
That is sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Let's keep going here. I do want to talk. We'll talk more about, I think, what we believe and what we think about all this at the end. But there's a couple more stories here I want to talk about.
Okay, tell me.
So Tucker's review also touches on personalities with children who remember. So children often engage in play that appears connected to the past life reports, particularly that involves the occupation of the previous employee. One boy, Parmad Sharam, became preoccupied with his play as a biscuit shopkeeper and neglected his schoolwork so much that his academic performance never seemed to recover.
Oh, wow.
Occasionally, children also reenact the death scene of the previous personality, appearing to show post-traumatic play. One boy who shared the interests of his previous personality was James Leininger. Now, James Leininger is probably the most famous, most covered, most talked about case when we talk about a child remembering a past life.
Oh, okay.
James was a young boy from Louisiana.
Oh.
And he believed that he was once a World War II pilot who had been shot down over Iwo Jima, an island that the United States fought to capture in 1945.
Mm-hmm.
So James's parents first realized that this was happening when James started to have nightmares. He would wake up screaming, "Airplane crash! Plane on fire!" He knew the details about World War II aircrafts, details that would be almost impossible for a youngster to know. For example, when his mother referred to an object on the bottom of a model plane as a bomb, he corrected her by saying, "That's not a bomb, that's a drop tank."
Oh.
In another instance, he and his parents were watching a documentary, and when the narrator called the Japanese plane a Zero, James insisted that it wasn't. It was a Tony. In both cases, James turned out to be right.
Jeez Louise.
So this is like I said, this was pretty well covered, and I have a clip from one of the news shows that covered this story, and I have James's mother and father kind of explaining when things started to get real. What happened when they kind of went, all right, there's something here, something's going on. So I'm going to play this clip for you, Eric.
Yeah, roll the clip.
Here we go.
He would just be crying, and he'd say, "Airplane crash on fire, little man can't get out." He laid on his back and kicked up at the ceiling, and he goes, "Mama, the little man's going like this." And he laid on his back and kicked his feet up. The little man's going, "Ooh, ooh, 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 can't get out." And I said, well, who's the little man, baby? And he goes, me. I thought Bruce and I were just going to faint.
Oh, my
They
God.
questioned, what kind of plane?
Corsair.
Why did your airplane crash?
My plane was shot down.
Who shot your plane?
He looked at me like I was a village idiot. He said,
The Japanese.
So that's when they started to kind of take things serious. And from July to September of 2000, James began to tell his parents that the plane in his nightmares was shot down by the Japanese after he had taken off from a ship on the water. And when James was asked if he knew who the pilot was, he simply replied, James.
Oh, my God.
Andrea asked James what type of plane he was flying in his dreams, and he said it was a Corsair. Then, after repeated attempts to push for more information, right after the nightmares, Bruce and Andrea got one word, Natoma.
What's that?
James's father, Bruce, was one time thumbing through a book. The book was called The Battle of Iwo Jima by Derek Wright. He to watch cartoons. While waiting for the cartoons to come on, James glanced down at the book with his dad. Suddenly, James pointed to a map of Iwo Jima near a place called Chichijima and said, Daddy, that's where my plane was shot down. Bruce says he almost kneeled over.
Keeled over.
Bruce says he almost keeled over. James claims his plane took off from the USS Natoma Bay. So that's where the word Natoma came from.
Oh, okay.
And was shot down over Chichijima.
Oh, Chi-Chis.
Those parents hoped to find out that this was not true. They Those parents hoped to find out that this was not true. They soon learned that it was all real. Every claim that James made. What's so funny?
Because I just realized what CERN was. Soon learned.
They soon learned it was all real, and that every claim James had made was able to be proven. They eventually came in contact with a friend who had served with a man named James Houston. Okay? This man's name's Leo Pyatt, and I have a clip from Leo Pyatt.
Yes, there was a...
Hey,
Yes.
pause it. Okay.
Yes, there was. Yes.
Okay, so here it is. This is Leo Pyatt talking about James Houston.
Who's Leo Pyatt?
Yes, there was a...
Oh my God, Eric.
You never told
Don't
me
you
who that
listen?
was. You just...
Yeah, Leo Pyatt was a friend who had served with James Houston in World War II.
Oh,
I did say that.
I don't remember.
Try and keep up.
I'm trying.
Okay, so here's the clip.
Roll
Yes,
it.
there was a Jim Houston, a rather large shell, just hit him in the engine, and it burst into flames and went down.
Okay, so James Houston was killed. He was shot down in World War II.
That's not right.
When James Leininger was shown pictures, he was able to recognize other shipmates of James Houston and name them by name. In October of 2000, another piece of the puzzle came clear. After another nightmare, James gave his parents the name Jack Larson and said it was Larson who flew with James. James's parents reached out to Pyatt again and asked him if he had recognized the name Jack Larson. Pyatt said he did indeed know Jack, that he and Houston had served with him, but he wasn't sure what ever happened to him after. Bruce also asked Pyatt about flying Corsairs, the ship that, or the plane that James always insisted he flew. When he asked him, Pyatt said that there were no Corsairs flown on the Natoma Bay. There were only Avengers and Wildcats. So they set out to find out who this Jack Larson guy was. But Bruce is James's father. Couldn't find anything out anywhere. In military records, after his son mentioned the name, there was nothing on Jack Larson. He searched every list he could find from the U.S. National Archives of the men who had died that were stationed on the Natoma Bay and all the carriers during World War II. There were several Larsons and Larsons, with an O, who had died, but no Jack Larson of the Natoma Bay. He searched for more than a year with nothing to show for it, and he almost gave up. There was a problem, Eric.
What?
Bruce was looking for a dead man. He was searching for people who had passed away during the war. After attending an Natoma Bay Association reunion in September of 2002, Bruce found out that Jack Larson was alive and well in Springdale, Arkansas.
Well, how did you find that out?
He went to a reunion, a Natoma Bay reunion.
Oh, and Jack was there.
I don't know if he was there, but I guess maybe somebody who knew him was there.
Oh. Well, I thought you just said that the other guy was like, yeah, I know him. I know Jack.
He did know him, but he didn't know what happened to him after the war ended. He didn't know if he died or...
okay.
He kind of lost track of him.
All right.
He just knew that they had served together.
I know Jack, but I'm not telling you Jack.
I'm keeping it to myself.
Yep.
So Bruce found out more about James Houston's death as well at the reunion.
Oh.
He found out that the Natoma Bay lost 21 men during its campaign in the Pacific. One of those men was Lieutenant James McCready Houston, Jr., from the VC-81 Fighter Squadron, who had been shot down at the age of 21 on a special strike mission against shipping in Futami Ko Harbor in Chichijima. According to a declassified aircraft action report, Houston had volunteered for the mission, the last mission he would ever fly on before returning to the United States. He was the only pilot from the Natoma Bay who was shot down at Chichijima. Bruce eventually visited Jack Larson in Arkansas in September of 2002, and he asked him about Houston. Larson said he couldn't remember what happened to Houston, but he was sure his plane had been hit by an anti-aircraft fire on March 3rd of 1945. So it kind of sounds like he does remember what happened to Houston.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
He says that day, Houston failed to return from his mission and then was pronounced missing in action.
No.
Larson had been Houston's wingman during his day's run to Chichijima.
And in the bars.
Goose.
Yep.
Iceman. Was it Iceman?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Top Gun?
I don't know if I've ever seen that or when the last time I did was. Maybe I was a child. I don't know.
All right, let's just keep going then.
Okay.
James's parents still hoped this was all nonsense.
What?
Which is understandable. I mean, if your kid's saying this, you kind of just want it to go away, right? Like, it's really creepy.
Yeah, it's creepy, but at this point, how can they think it's nonsense?
Well, the one thing that his dad kept harping back to was he insisted that he was flying Corsairs. And everyone he talked to said no, there were no Corsairs on Natoma Bay.
Yeah,
None.
no.
They just weren't there. So after vigorously checking into the squadron's aircraft records, again, he found that Houston was shot down in an FM-2 Wildcat fighter plane, not a Corsair. And that no one at the reunion mentioned anything about Corsairs ever taking off from the Natoma Bay. Bruce said that this apparent inaccuracy gave him hope that this was all just a series of coincidences. Okay, guys, this is Paul here. Bad news. At this point in the podcast, the recording stopped. We lost about the last 10 minutes of audio. We want to apologize for this. We were not prepared for something like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the rest of the story. That way you can find out what happened with James and the Leiningers. And then me and Eric next week will discuss our thoughts on reincarnation. Like I said, in the future, we hope to have kind of a plan B if anything like this would happen. But, you know, there's road bumps along the way, and we're still kind of new to this thing. So, again, please forgive us. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. Bruce was talking about how all the inaccuracies, he was hoping they still meant that this was just some series of coincidences. So just to make sure, Bruce tried to find members of the Houston family. He was eventually able to make contact with James's sister, Ann Houston Barron. Through several phone calls, the Leiningers and Mrs. Barron became friends, and she agreed to send Bruce photos of her brother during his military service. The package of photos arrived in February of 2003. In one of the packages was a photo of Houston standing in front of a Corsair fighter plane. This is the same plane that James had mentioned over and over that he flew. According to Bruce, interviews with past servicemen, and declassified United States military records, before Houston joined up with the Natoma Bay and the VC-81, He was part of an elite special squadron called the VF-301 Devil's Disciples from January to August of 1944. This elite squadron test flew Corsairs for carrier use. There were only 20 pilots selected for this assignment, and James was one of them. However, the VF-301 squadron was disbanded after 8 months, and Houston was transferred to the VC-81 on October 8th, 1944. When Bruce learned this, he says that all of his skepticism vanished. Bruce didn't tell Mrs. Barron about his son's supernatural story until later that fall, in October of 2003. When he finally told her about the possibility of her brother's spirit being part of James, she said she was stunned at first and had to let it all sink in. And then on October 15, 2003, Bruce and Andrea received a letter from her along with several of Houston's personal effects that not only said that she felt James should have the belongings, but that she truly believed the story. She's quoted as saying, "This child couldn't have known the things he does. He just couldn't. So I believe he's somehow part of my brother." These are things you read about, and there must be a reason for it, but I have no hint of what it could be. It's some phenomenon. Something I don't understand. It happened nearly 60 years ago, and there must be a reason. So despite not knowing the reason for these coincidences, Mrs. Barron is convinced that James Leininger is somehow linked to her long-lost brother. She now calls the 6-year-old boy James 3. That's in reference to him being the third James in the line. James Houston was a junior. Now James Leininger would be the third James. And in turn, James refers to Mrs. Barron, who is 86 years old, as his sister. As Bruce would uncover more information about Houston, without telling James any of it, the Leiningers would notice more and more about their son's actions. James had 3 G.I. Joe dolls, named Leon, Walter, and Billy. These were 3 pilots who coincidentally served with Houston. According to the U.S. Pacific Fleet records, Lieutenant Leon Stevens Connor, Walter John Delvin, and Billy Rufus Peeler were among the 21 fatalities from the Natoma Bay. They were also members of the VC-81 Air Squadron with Houston. And when asked why he had named the dolls the way he did, Bruce says that James answered, "Because they greeted me when I went to heaven." After James said that, Bruce could only leave the room in stunned silence. James also explained to his father that the Corsairs would frequently have flat tires, and they would always tend to turn left. After checking with military historians at the Lone Star Flight Museum in Galveston, Texas, this statement was also verified. So that's it, guys. That's what we have on reincarnation. I mentioned to Eric, I think we're going to do another episode on just kind of the stories of people that have experienced this. There were a lot of cool stories I came across that I wasn't able to include in this episode, including a boy who remembers being in a battle at the Civil War, a boy who, after seeing a picture of the World Trade Center on the cover of Curious George book, remembers being a firefighter who was in the building when it fell, and an Indian girl who remembers living in a village 140 miles from her home in a family of incense makers. She remembered it so vividly that she could name the exact type of incense they made. And it turns out that the village only had one family licensed to make that sort of incense. Their son was struck and killed by a bus while out selling incense. The Indian girl has a birthmark along her left side where the bus struck the family's son. Again, guys, we apologize for this kind of odd, abrupt ending to the podcast. I do want to give special thanks to James Tucker's review. We're going to link that in the episode guide at GoosePimplesPodcast.com. I want to thank Arjan Walla at www.collective-evolution.com. And I want to thank facts-rfacts.com for some of the research that we used in today's episode. Guys, if reincarnation or kids remembering past lives gave you goose pimples, do us a favor and just tell a friend about the podcast. It's growing a lot. Our numbers are going up. We've seen it. We're kind of taken aback by it. So you guys are doing a great job. And make sure to check out Parabox. It's para-box.com for only $19.95 a month. You can get started and get your first box next month. Make sure to use the promo code GoosePimples. That's all one word, GoosePimples at checkout. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Again, we'll talk more about this subject next week. So stay tuned to that, and we'll see you next Monday.